Hello, welcome to the A Book a Day channel. Today, the book I'm going to tell you about is Why Greatness Cannot Be Planned, The Myth of the Objective, written by Kenneth Stanley and Joel Lehman. Just hearing the names of these two authors, Stanley and Lehman, you might feel unfamiliar. But if we mention the company they work for, you might be more impressed. Both of them are researchers at OpenAI. As everyone knows, in November 2022, OpenAI released the renowned artificial intelligence language training model ChatGPT, capable of smoothly and naturally answering questions, translating text, summarizing information, and even writing documents at a level close to human fluency. Stanley and Lehman are core scientists in the ChatGPT development team. In a sense, this book, Why Greatness Cannot Be Planned, can be seen as Lehman and Stanley's summary and elevation of their own technical exploration and innovation methodology. However, what Lehman and Stanley want to discuss is not their experiences in developing ChatGPT or even the path of artificial intelligence technology development. Instead, they explore the underlying logic of achieving innovation and breakthroughs in this rapidly evolving era of technology, which is quite disruptive and forward-thinking. So today, we highly recommend it to you. In our common understanding, innovative research in science and technology follows a linear logic. Researchers first set a goal and then, through theoretical hypotheses and experiments, gradually eliminate errors, advance toward the goal, and eventually overcome all obstacles to reach the summit of success. However, is this view really accurate? Surprisingly, the two authors tell you right at the beginning of this book that this perspective is wrong, and very wrong indeed. Stanley and Lehman argue that, in their years of research in artificial intelligence algorithm optimization, they have come to understand a truth. In the modern field of science and technology, truly great breakthroughs are not the result of carefully planned goals in advance. For example, the most recent large-scale technological innovation project that succeeded, driven by top-down design and predefined objectives, was the Apollo moon landing program led by the U.S. government in the 1960s and 70s. Since then, there have been no similar cases. In other words, any innovation and breakthrough is not like climbing a mountain, where you follow a predetermined path towards a clear, visible goal. Instead, it's like searching for treasure in a thick, foggy swamp. The goal is unknown, the path is uncertain, and the task of the treasure hunter is to find as many stepping stones as possible, exploring a large area, and then seeing what valuable little things can be found in the areas they've explored. Of course, in the field of scientific innovation, being valuable doesn't always mean immediate economic benefits. Stanley and Lehman explain that in scientific exploration, the value of any theory solution, material, or technology is often linked to its novelty. Novelty is king. Paul Graham, the acclaimed genius programmer and venture capitalist known as the father of Silicon Valley, has said that in high-tech, excellent research is not necessarily good but must be new. An excellent product design is not necessarily new but must be good. Only by using brand new creativity and theories can revolutionary products emerge to solve problems that previous generations could not solve. So why is this the case? Because novelty implies the expansion of our cognitive boundaries, more new information, and the upgrading and complexity of our existing cognitive structures. Ultimately, in this seemingly aimless treasure hunting in scientific research, it inevitably leads to the emergence of technology or solutions that surpass the previous level of human capability and have crushing iterative power. At this point, I believe you have developed some interest and expectations for the content of this book. So next, I will divide it into two parts and tell you about the main content of the book. First, let's look at why detailed goals and overly specific plans can hinder breakthroughs and innovation in the forefront of technology. Secondly, following the thoughts of Stanley and Lehman, let's explore how to achieve breakthroughs and innovation in today's rapidly developing technology and the prevailing trend of interdisciplinary research. Part 1. First, let's take a look at why the authors, Stanley and Lehman, argue that in high-tech exploration, setting clear goals is not an effective approach and may narrow the field of exploration, providing incorrect ideas and directions. In our daily learning and work, we are constantly told that having a goal is what gives us motivation and a sense of purpose. The so-called plan and then act approach allows us to develop detailed and precise action and learning plans by setting and breaking down ultimate goals, continually improving and upgrading ourselves day by day. Furthermore, it is widely believed that whether it's at the individual level, within organizations, or on a broader societal or national scale, even within the entire biosphere and natural environment, their existence and development are all driven by predefined ultimate goals, such as survival and evolution. Once a goal is lost, whether for individuals or organisms, societies as collective entities, or even nature, it can lead to stagnation, confusion, and bewilderment. However, Stanley and Lehman argue that this goal-centered approach, while reasonable and effective in conventional contexts, often falls short when it comes to rapid advancements in science, technology innovation laden with high risks and uncertainties. And even in the field of art, many rules within goal-oriented thinking become invalid. Why does this happen? Stanley and Lehman explain that ambitious goals, due to their complexity and the multitude of variables involved, often make it impossible to immediately develop a clear, actionable roadmap using existing technology and theories. Stanley and Lehman suggest that in the world of cutting-edge scientific and technological advancements, real breakthroughs are more akin to a treasure hunt. We must explore gradually within a vast, dark, and complex room or a swamp where many objects are scattered around, and the desired outcome or reward might be hidden in some corner, seemingly unrelated to it. For example, there are a stack of objects like the use of fire, the invention of the wheel, or archery, which were essential for the early transition of humans to an agricultural, settled civilization. In the distance, there are personal computers, fiber optics, and other technologies necessary for humanity's entry into the information age. We must slowly explore in the darkness, making marks to identify areas that have already been explored, and to identify unexplored areas. In the case of a swamp, we also need to find stepping stones to help us proceed further. Moreover, many of these scattered treasures have close connections between them. You need to find object A to gain valuable clues about the location of objects B or C in this situation. The more specific and distant a goal is, the more it can hinder progress. Looking back at the history of human technological inventions, we can find many cases where a seemingly well-planned goal turned out to be different from the actual outcome. For example, the everyday microwave oven. You might think that a consumer electronics company or an inventor set out to create a convenient and efficient food heater and dedicated themselves to inventing an energy efficient and safe heating technology, ultimately selecting electromagnetic waves. However, the history of using electromagnetic wave devices dates back much earlier than our use of microwave ovens. As early as the 1920s and 1930s, magnetrons capable of emitting stable electromagnetic waves were manufactured for radar detection devices. They were continually improved during World War II. It wasn't until 1946 that an engineer at Raytheon, a U.S. defense contractor named Percy Spencer, accidentally discovered that a chocolate bar in his pocket melted when he was near the radar equipment, realizing that electromagnetic waves could also be used for heating food. Another example relates to data storage, which is crucial for the development of computers. Surprisingly, the earliest invention and application of data storage technology were in the textile industry. As far back as the 18th century, a French mechanic and inventor named Cécile Bouchon envisioned a device that would allow looms to weave complex patterns quickly. The punched card. The patterns on the fabric were created by overlaying different colored threads. And prior to the punched card, creating complex patterns required a dedicated artist to manually control the overlap of different colored threads near the machine. This was a labor-intensive and inefficient process, resulting in low production of complex patterned fabric at high prices. The punched card effectively acted as the original control program for the machine. The specific process involved a stack of punched cards placed on the loom's base, and as the weaving needles moved, they would pass through holes in the cards, lifting specific colored threads according to the pattern. Thus, a set of punched cards with holes in different positions could precisely control when the weaving needles would lift, allowing for the rapid production of complex patterned fabric. In the 19th century, Charles Babbage, an English mathematician, noticed the punched card's potential. He realized that if punched cards could store the printed patterns of fabric, they could also record complex numerical calculation patterns and be applied to early mechanical computers, enabling them to perform complex numerical calculations based on a program. In the 1940s and 1950s, after the advent of early electronic computers, scientists realized that early computer programs could be translated into a set of binary codes, stored on punched cards, read by the computer and executed. So if we review the path of significant technological advancements, or innovations, many of the so-called stepping stones were discovered when humans explored other seemingly unrelated fields. The original applications of these stepping stones had no apparent connection to the grand goals that were eventually achieved. Stanley and Lehman even propose a hypothesis that avid readers of internet literature might find familiar. If a group of modern IT engineers and scientists were to collectively travel to ancient times, and gather the most intelligent people of that era, would they be able to create a computer using a goal-oriented model? The answer is clearly no. On the surface, the project would face limitations, such as lacking the infrastructure and raw materials required for building a computer, from electricity and industrial machine tools to purified silicon, which were unavailable in ancient times. However, the deeper reason is that the people of ancient times could not fathom the purpose of creating such a machine. It's evident that only when economic and scientific activities reach a certain level of complexity do the technologies and materials related to computer construction appear. Simultaneously, humans also realize the need for a machine with supercomputing and information processing capabilities. Moreover, overly specific but distant goals can lead us down the wrong path in our exploration or research. In the book, Stanley and Lehman provide an example. Imagine you become a creator and have a planet identical to Earth with some simple single-celled organisms. What strategy should you adopt to evolve these organisms into highly intelligent beings like humans? Stanley and Lehman say that if we were to apply the goal-oriented strategy that we are accustomed to, the strategy would involve evaluating the intelligence of all single-celled organisms and then selecting the most intelligent ones for breeding. However, the answer is paradoxical and would likely make people laugh. If we break down the essence of intelligence from the perspective of neuroscience and the evolutionary process, we find that the emergence of highly intelligent beings is not the primary goal of natural evolution but, at best, a side effect of the evolutionary process. First, let's understand the essence of intelligence. The biologist and science communicator, Wang Liming, once defined intelligence as a pattern of interaction between an individual and its environment. It involves capturing information, accumulating experience, deriving patterns, and improving strategies and techniques. In simple terms, intelligence is a form of learning ability. From a neurobiological perspective, learning is the result of connections and resonances between neurons inside a living organism. So how do you enhance the efficiency of learning for early Earth organisms? The most convenient method is to have a significant number of neurons in the body working together while enhancing the total amount of information exchanged within a specific time frame. Therefore, complex multicellular organisms have a decisive advantage over single-celled organisms. However, the transition from single-celled to multi-celled organisms was primarily driven by the need for survival, not to develop higher intelligence. In a world where biological species were scarce, and their forms were similar, having a larger body reduced the risk of being eaten, allowing one to become a predator at the top of the food chain. Furthermore, becoming a multicellular organism had another advantage. It allowed individual cells to specialize and divide labor within the organism. This enabled the organism to perform multiple functions simultaneously, including movement, reproduction, and energy production, among others. Theoretical physicist Geoffrey West proposed a law of Kleiber's law, suggesting that the larger and more complex an organism's structure is, the less energy it needs to sustain itself. Specifically, for every doubling of scale, there is a 25% energy surplus. Thus, for an organism to improve its chances of survival, it must enhance the complexity of its structure to achieve economy of scale. As a result, highly intelligent beings like humans, who have evolved a complex brain structure, are not the targets of natural evolution, but rather a byproduct of the exploration process. In Stanley and Lehman's words, competition in natural evolution is not all-encompassing. Each organism doesn't need to achieve overall optimization, but can reach local optima within its specific ecological niche. Occasionally, through accidental mutations, new ecological niches emerge. So after all organisms have acquired the basic abilities of survival and reproduction, evolution becomes a classic example of non-goal-directed exploration. In other words, when the biological world evolves and gives rise to highly intelligent beings like humans, it is precisely because nature did not have the birth of highly intelligent beings as its goal. Similar situations often occur in the training of artificial intelligence by scientists, giving rise to countless surprising and amusing outcomes. Stanley and Lehman provide an example from their own experiments in training artificial intelligence. They set up a flat maze and trained a robot to navigate the maze and reach the exit. Unexpectedly, when the algorithm was set to reach the exit as quickly as possible, the robot's progress slowed down. This was because the robot always followed the principle of prioritizing the goal, attempting to plan the most direct route to the exit. In this case, the robot deemed that any deviation from the path toward the exit was incorrect, even if it was to navigate corners or obstacles within the maze. Consequently, the robot would continuously rush toward the exit and crash into the walls of the maze, resulting in an ineffective and often frustrating approach. Through this simple computational experiment, Stanley and Lehman were able to demonstrate the principle that goal-oriented thinking can lead to incorrect solution paths. Part 2. So how can innovation and breakthroughs be achieved? Stanley and Lehman say that first and foremost, you should approach your exploration or research as a quest for novelty and intrigue. Temporarily shift your focus away from grand and distant goals, and turn it towards the treasures that may be buried within your immediate surroundings, and the stepping stones to uncharted territories. You might wonder if pursuing novelty sounds aimless and difficult to control, whether it's a reliable guiding principle for scientific research or technological innovation. Stanley and Lehman reassure that you should not worry. Firstly, exploring the unknown is the most fundamental driving force behind human evolution and civilization development. Even if you ultimately fail, your efforts to pursue new theories and solutions will provide valuable experience and data compared to exploring along predefined paths. To prove this point, Stanley and Lehman share an experiment they conducted in the field of artificial intelligence. The experiment aimed to teach a robot with human-like legs to walk. In the algorithm they designed for the robot, the priority was not to get the robot walking as soon as possible, but to encourage it to make novel movements with its legs. Surprisingly, when the algorithm was set to encourage the robot to make novel movements, it took much less time for the robot to learn how to walk compared to when the goal was simply to get it walking as quickly as possible. Why did this happen? It turns out that when the robot was set to learn to walk as quickly as possible, falling down was considered a bad thing in the algorithm's logic. The robot would strive to avoid falling, but at the same time, this limitation prevented it from experimenting with different walking postures. On the other hand, when novelty in movement was the priority, the robot started by trying various acrobatic moves. But through this process, it gradually learned to kick and swing its body, which are the basics for walking with two legs. Sometimes, even playful experimentation, without a clear application or an unfinished function, can lead to unexpected technological advancements. For example, consider 3D printing technology, which is often regarded as the catalyst for the next industrial revolution. In 1995, Jim Brett, who was a graduate student at MIT at the time, and his friend Anderson were assigned to a project in their lab to improve the nozzle of a concrete spraying machine. However, Brett found that the nozzle was consistently clogging. He suspected an issue with the concrete mix, but that wasn't within his purview. So why not do something interesting with the nozzle? So, he and Anderson went to a grocery store, gathered various materials, including icing sugar, cake mix, and shredded cheese, and sprayed these materials through the nozzle, creating solid shapes. They had another bright idea to connect the nozzle to a printer, enabling it to print various three-dimensional letters. Eventually, this groundbreaking invention secured a patent from MIT and $7 million in startup funding. Even in cases where an idea or innovation hasn't found a specific application or is not fully functional yet, visionary explorers often sense that it's a significant stepping stone that will greatly expand their cognitive boundaries. Take, for example, the Silicon Valley pioneer Paul Graham, who refers to himself as a pirate. Graham studied philosophy at Cornell University but felt that he should be working on something technical that could directly change the world. So, during his graduate studies at Harvard, he started diving into computer science and artificial intelligence theory. However, as he began learning programming and AI theory, Graham also became fascinated by visual arts. During his holidays, he enrolled in painting courses at the prestigious Rhode Island School of Design. Graham summarizes that his broad exploration across multiple domains provides a holistic big-picture view. Both painting and programming, he realized, fundamentally involve insight precision, addressing user needs, aesthetics, and the flexibility to make continuous modifications and improvements. However, Stanley and Lehman remind us that the seemingly eureka moments, or innovative breakthroughs in the history of science, are never purely accidental. It's because the people involved have already discovered countless stepping stones in their long and arduous exploration. Unbeknownst to them, the treasure was just a step away. For example, even if we consider the famous story of Isaac Newton and the apple, it only demonstrates that the falling apple served as the final stepping stone leading Newton to discover the law of universal gravitation. Before this, Newton had been deeply immersed in years of research in mathematics and astrophysics. Many people had witnessed apples falling, but only Newton could connect this event with the gravitational force acting on celestial bodies. Ultimately, it's the result of Newton's keen observations and open-mindedness, which were formed during his years of extensive research. Conclusion. So let's summarize. The two authors, Stanley and Lehman, have presented an entirely different vision and methodology for technological innovation. They've done this without resorting to excessive use of artificial intelligence jargon or a single mathematical formula. Instead, they use engaging and straightforward language to show us the underlying logic for reaching greatness and success. Do not be fixated on goals. Do not rigidly prescribe specific solutions. Instead, use your interests as a lasting motivation, and embrace a mindset of exploring and treasure hunting. Throughout this book, Stanley and Lehman dedicate a considerable amount of pages to substantiate that in high-tech fields, the single-minded pursuit of goals can lead to pitfalls, such as a narrow perspective and incorrect method paths. This overemphasis on goal-oriented approaches is particularly pronounced in the field of artificial intelligence, the very domain where the authors have delved deep. For instance, they question whether a universally applicable AI solution exists. Should AI leverage existing algorithms and massive databases for deep learning to understand human language? Or should it take the opposite route and attempt to think like humans, grasping the logical relations behind various language concepts? It seems that in the foreseeable future, these questions won't have definite answers. Simultaneously, Stanley and Lehman provide their own insights on some of the drawbacks in the innovation system of high-tech companies in the United States today. They believe that the fixation on rapidly achieving specific technological innovations and the urgency to turn a profit are leading the once vibrant U.S. high-tech industry astray. On one hand, stepping stone technologies that may not yield immediate utility, but have the potential for major breakthroughs, are not receiving the attention and funding they deserve. On the other hand, many technologies that look good but are far from mature and have unclear application scenarios are becoming frothy due to capital speculation. Although Stanley and Lehman's critique is directed at the United States, certain viewpoints may hold valuable lessons for other countries. The strategy of pouring substantial funds into a specific research area will reliably yield fundamental breakthroughs has been shown to carry serious risks and uncertainties. On the other hand, aimless exploration may seem inadvisable, but it aligns with the essence of scientific exploration. So Stanley and Lehman, through this book, call upon everyone preparing to explore the unknown world and advance the technological frontier. Do not blindly cast your gaze into the distance. Instead, focus on what's around you, the stepping stones at your feet. Although they may only lead temporarily to another stone, we must believe that it is the chain of innovation formed by these stepping stones that is the right path to reaching the side of great discoveries. This concludes the essence of the book, Why Greatness Cannot Be Planned. Feel free to share this book with your friends. Congratulations, you've finished another book.